Welcome to our presentation. We're going to present to you the transcultural communication policy. And we are group 9 and choose option B, the case study on the example of Coca-Cola. Our group consists of Sishan, Ludwig, Jay, and Sven. Let's start with our table of content. First, we have the introduction and justification for you. Then we wanted to pose some questions which we're going to answer in the following presentation. According to our theoretical approach, that includes transculturality and global advertising, and then we come to the description of our case study, as well as obviously the analysis of the case study, which in our case is a TV campaign. Then we're going to present you our findings and results and come to a conclusion. Let's come to the introduction. So first, we wanted to pose a question, and that would be, is global advertising actually possible? And if so, is there an optimal strategy to go with? And let's first start in with adaptation with a standardization. So if you're a global company, then somehow you also got stuck with standardization or adaptation strategy. What is the right marketing approach for a firm operating in international markets? Whether to standardize or localize? It is a confusion. We will talk about both strategies and later we explore and try to find an answer to our question with a case study. Let me give a little background on both perspectives now. Let's first come to the standardization strategy, and the standardization strategy is from Theodore Levitt. In 1983, Theodore Levitt, in Globalization of Markets, proposed a standardization strategy. According to him, with globalization boundaries across national cultures, consumer cultures are converging, so everything is becoming like the same. Through cultural differences exist, but low prices and high quality, for example, can overcome those differences. And that, according to him, is why we should standardize our strategies. The standardization strategy helps you to achieve economies of scale, and companies can also compete on a global level. It's easier to plan, communicate, and control. And to not forget, this is a globalist point of view. So let's now take a look what his, so to say, opponent has to say. So let's come to the adaptation strategy from Hofstede. So Hofstede in 1983, on the contrary, argued that culture does indeed have consequences that cannot be overlooked. And when he talks about culture, he means it by national culture. He says it's the collective programming of the mind. Cultural characteristics and differences are less mutable and hence less easily compromised and resolved than political or economical ones. That is according to Huntington. And the consumer culture is also divergent. Consumer cultures need a heterogenic field because of cultural differences. We should adapt to local market preferences and differentiate instead of standardize. And then based on those two concepts, there are 5 different marketing strategies to go with. The first would be the international marketing strategy, that is ethnocentric. And then the multinational marketing strategy, that is, for example, localized. And then we have the regional marketing strategy, that is as well both localized and standardized, and for example, a hyperlocal marketing strategy at last, that is both as well localized and standardized. But today we will be discussing only about global marketing strategy. In communication mix, our focus is on advertising because according to Morstedt, the most viable form of communication is in consumer good industry. It's advertisement. So let's get back to our question, is global advertisement possible? And for that we will analyze the Coca-Cola's campaign, Taste the Feeling. So let's come to our theoretical approach with transculturality and global advertising. And advertising, according to Usineer, is made after a 5-step plan. And according to him, that's also done in multiple countries. So first you have to isolate the communicating problem to be solved. For example, increase the brand awareness or change the brand image. Then identify the relevant target population, so which consumer segments. Define the marketing communication object in terms of influencing the target populations. And then select the advertising themes and create a creative strategy. That could, for example, be how will be the name of the brand emphasized or which copy strategy should be used, as well as a final design. And design, he refers to a media plan, which media to use and how to optimize media use in order to reach the preferred target audience.
Now we will discuss about the theoretical approach of transculturality and global advertising. Advertising is based on language and communication, and it is the most culture-bound element of the marketing mix. Since advertising is largely based on language and images, it is influenced by culture. Cross-national differences continue to exist for the simple reason that we have not yet ceased to have different languages. Language, be it through words or images, is the strongest link between advertisers and their potential audiences in marketing communications. There are a few problems that entail of advertising. The first problem is that advertising has constantly changing environment. Secondly, advertising has cultural differences. Third, advertising is dependent on cultural and linguistic attitudes of target group. And lastly, the relative freedom of advertising creation and the need to capture the audience imply that advertising is sometimes challenging and often innovative. It is therefore a ground for societal debates. In terms of culture perspective, we have to consider that the culture is a variable. The key questions we have to ask is that what values are decisive to understand the target market? And how can I adapt product and message to the cultural context? In terms of the strategic perspective, cultural contrastive approach tend to maximize standardization and localize where needed. Now, global marketing has a geocentric approach. They have the principle as homogeneity as a goal and heterogeneity as circumstance. Integration culturally specific marketing is dynamic, and the discourse is as global as possible and local as necessary. Let's get back to our question. Is global advertisement possible? And for that, we will analyze Coca-Cola's campaign, Taste the Feeling. We took Coca-Cola because it is the world's largest beverage company. Coca-Cola is one of the most valuable brands according to Statista. Their portfolio features Diet Coke, Fanta, Sprite, Coca-Cola Zero, and many more. Our focus is not on their subsidiaries, but the brand itself that consists of Coca-Cola, Cola Zero, Diet Cola, and it goes on. Their revenue is about 37 billion US dollars. And in terms of their brand value from 2006 and 2019, it has been growing gradually since 2015. Brand value is increasing and as their expenditure as well. Since 2014, they have been increasing their advertising expenses and currently is peaking at 4.2 billion US dollars.
Presentation on a case study on Coca-Cola's major campaign, which was Taste the Feeling. In 2016, they launched this campaign, and they, and we found out how successful this campaign is. So let's take a deep dive into this case study. As you can see, as I spoke about it in the earlier slide, Taste the Feeling was a campaign we took. So as you all might know, Coca-Cola has different sub-brands, but its product portfolio includes the four key brands, which is Coca-Cola, the refreshment drink, Coke Zero, Diet Coke, and Coca-Cola Life. In 2016, when this campaign was launched, the Coca-Cola chief market officer Marcus De Quinto spoke about this, and he quoted, "Coca-Cola's Taste the Feeling campaign will unite the four product portfolios of Coca-Cola under one slogan." So we took this to a further step, and we tried to analyze it in four different countries, which are US, South Korea, Germany, and Pakistan. And we came up with this template. So with this template, you can see we talked about the screen caption, the scenic background, the slogan, the story of the commercial, the characters, and the song, which was obviously very popular and sung by Avicii and Conrad Swell in the year 2016 when this campaign was launched. Now, I will be talking about the conclusion analysis and how we can play devil's advocate in most of the campaign strategies. So, as you can see, these are our key findings from the campaign. So, it had the same scenic background. You can't do much of that because you can't play much of devil's advocate here. But on the second point, you can talk about the same slogan, but it was translated into the local languages of Pakistan and South Korea, which is either Urdu and Korean. If you play devil's advocate here, we can see that in the Pakistani ad, the campaign was the song was translated into Urdu, and the song meant "taste the feeling," but in the Urdu language it meant "maza aar na mehka." It had the same story, the song, and the same characters. The only, on the other hand, I would like to also talk about the adaptation, which is the language. According to UNICEF, language is something which is not mostly cultural bound, and most of the song was in Urdu. In the South Korean ad, on the other hand, in the South Korean ad, the song was half sung in English and half sung in South Korean to give a more enriching or an enlightenment to the audience. What are they expecting for? And all the core elements were the same and they were standardized. We based this on we based this strategy on Levitt's standardization theory, as you can see in the next slide. This slide talks about the standardization with partial adaptation. We could say that this campaign was global as well as local, culturally specific, as you could see in the Pakistani and the South Korean ads, as this became a necessity, and this also supports Levitt's standardization theory. Below, you could see a diagram which shows how Levitt's standardization theory works. We would argue on this analysis that global advertising is possible.
Now we know that global advertisement is possible, and Coca-Cola did this successfully with Taste the Feeling campaign. But this is not the whole picture. We find out that Coca-Cola also run local campaigns that are very different than their global campaign. For example, in Pakistan, we found out that they run a campaign that was pictured around a traditional style wedding where the character chose cola over chai. It's also a comparative campaign. This campaign was totally different than their other standardized or global campaigns. It's just for that market. So from that, we could say that Coca-Cola actually follows contingency approach. Why contingency approach is important? In the beginning, we already mentioned Levitt's and Hofstede's thoughts about convergence and divergence of cultures. As Kierkegaard criticizes them both, he argues it becomes apparent that in spite of homogenization processes due to globalization, cultures does not lose relevance. This point is where Levitt was completely wrong even as he was right. At the same time, culture's consequences can no longer be defined in the universalistic and essentializing terms that are the foundation of Hofstede's project. He argues that consumers act differently on different occasions. Conventional approaches to study cross-cultural behavior have become inadequate to capture the complexity of cultural dynamics in the global world. The conventional approaches emphasize cultural similarities and differences and concentrate on adjusting an existing marketing mix to a particular market depending on the extent of the cultural fit between home and host markets. Also, Roland Robertson argues local and global are not opposite to each other. In terms of globalization, he says it's universalization of particularity and particularization of universality. From this we can suggest that consumers can be attached to both global and local. Consumers act differently in different situations, and their actions are by no means always consistent. Gullies-Kerr says, on one hand, consumers are attracted to the foreign as they drink Starbucks coffee or walk the streets with iPods. They feel they are a part of a global community and modernity. On the other hand, they enjoy an intimate connection to local goods. We as marketing people might have a better understanding of the market by identifying the cultural tensions. At the end, we might want to conclude as you have seen in Coca-Cola's case study, global advertisement is possible. But we just want to tell you that there is no perfect or any optimal strategy to go with. And that statement kinds of refer to our second question, as you already remembered. The second question was, is there any optimal strategy? We could say no, there is no optimal strategy. Why? Because there are a lot of variables to be considered before developing any strategy. And there is no such as perfect strategy. It always depends on the market, geography, macroeconomy, society, culture, legal issues. There are a lot of variables. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, you can ask us. Any feedback would be appreciated. Thanks a lot. So that was it. And this is our bibliography, as you can see.